Are we expecting a beef deal?
I assume you're talking about beef. Yeah,
No,
to get beef prices down. The only price we have that's high is beef, and we'll get that down. And one of the things we're thinking about doing is beef from Argentina.
No, but my question is, what do you have to say to U.S. farmers who feel that the deal is benefiting Argentina more than it is them, they are a top
Argentina's fighting for its life, young lady. You don't know anything about it.
Trump shakes up U.S. food policy with Argentina beef plan. When Donald Trump stepped off Air Force One last week and told reporters the United States was considering buying beef from Argentina, it sounded like a headline out of nowhere, a single sentence that rippled through the worlds of trade, agriculture, and politics within hours. "We're going to buy some beef from Argentina," he said. "We want to bring prices down for the American people." It was short, off the cuff, and deeply intentional. Because in today's America, where inflation remains stubborn and grocery bills have become a symbol of national frustration, beef isn't just food, it's politics on a plate. For months, the U.S. has faced one of the sharpest rises in food prices in modern history. The average cost of beef is up nearly 20% over the past year, with some cuts soaring even higher. Drought has decimated cattle herds in Texas, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Feed prices have skyrocketed due to global grain shortages, and labor issues have plagued meatpacking plants from Nebraska to Illinois. The result? The American dinner table is feeling the strain. Burgers, steaks, brisket, the staples of weekend grills, now symbolize a deeper economic unease. And into that frustration, Trump has thrown a foreign solution: Argentinian beef. Argentina isn't a random pick. It's one of the world's most famous beef exporters, known for its grass-fed cattle and competitive prices. The country's economic struggles have tainted the peso, making its exports cheaper on the global market. For Trump, who built his political identity on the art of the deal, this is a familiar equation: buy low, sell relief. The plan, at least in concept, would flood the U.S. market with imported beef, forcing domestic producers to lower prices and giving American consumers a temporary break from grocery store sticker shock. On paper, it sounds clever. In practice, it's a gamble with massive implications. To understand why, you need to know just how strained America's cattle industry has become. The U.S. cattle herd is now at its smallest since the 1950s, roughly 86.7 million head, down nearly 7% from 3 years ago. Ranchers have been forced to cull animals early because of drought-damaged grazing lands. Water reservoirs have run dry across parts of the Midwest, and feed costs have doubled in some regions. Rebuilding herds takes years, not months. Calves born today won't hit processing plants until 2027 or later. In the meantime, supply has crashed and prices have soared. And Trump, who campaigned on defending U.S. farmers, is now flirting with a move that could pit him against them. That's the irony that's igniting outrage across the heartland. Ranchers in Texas, Wyoming, and Nebraska are already calling the plan a betrayal. To them, importing foreign beef when domestic ranches are barely staying afloat feels like being sold out by the very administration that promised to buy American. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association released a statement warning that cheap imports may lower prices in the short term, but devastate rural economies in the long term. Their fear isn't unfounded. Once imported beef hits grocery stores, it blurs the line of origin labeling. Consumers looking for US-raised meat may not even realize what they're buying. And when the price war begins, small ranchers, already drowning in debt, will be the first to go under. Yet from Trump's perspective, this is a necessary disruption. He's positioning himself as the president willing to take on corporate greed in the food sector, a populist defender of the everyday American who just wants to afford dinner. He's accused meatpacking giants of price gouging, calling them the middlemen, making billions off the backs of families. It's a message that resonates with millions struggling to stretch their paychecks. By invoking Argentina, Trump isn't just talking about beef. He's talking about control. Control over prices, control over perception, and control over the narrative that Washington can still do something about inflation. Behind the scenes, economists and trade analysts see this as more than a grocery aisle fix. They see it as a potential reshaping of U.S. trade relations. Argentina's libertarian president, Javier Milei, has been openly courting Trump for months. The two share a populist style, a disdain for bureaucracy, and a love for dramatic economic gestures. For Milei, selling beef to America could be a lifeline for Argentina's shattered economy. For Trump, it's leverage, a way to strengthen ties with a South American ally while signaling to China and Brazil that U.S. trade routes can shift at will. It's transactional diplomacy, wrapped in steakhouse logic. Still, the move is risky. Food supply chains aren't like oil or tech imports. They're emotionally loaded, culturally rooted, and politically explosive. America's beef industry employs hundreds of thousands, from ranchers to truckers to butchers. Opening the door to Argentinian imports means reshuffling that entire ecosystem. It also raises practical questions. How will USDA inspections handle large-scale foreign meat processing? Will consumer trust hold if "made in the USA" loses meaning? And can imported beef actually make a dent in prices once transportation, tariffs, and safety standards are factored in? Analysts are skeptical. One USDA report estimated that even doubling beef imports would only reduce retail prices by 2 to 3%, barely noticeable on most grocery receipts. Yet politically, optics often outweigh math. Trump knows that headlines about cheaper beef play better than charts about economic elasticity. Every voter who sees lower meat prices at Walmart, even temporarily, is a potential win. And if the move puts him at odds with traditional Republican allies in the ranching world, he seems willing to take that fight. It's not the first time Trump has weaponized trade policy for political theater. From China tariffs to NAFTA renegotiations, he's built a brand on confrontation and disruption. The Argentinian beef gambit fits that pattern perfectly. Simple enough to sound decisive, complex enough to keep experts arguing, and dramatic enough to dominate the news cycle. But the ripple effects reach far beyond economics. Environmental groups are already warning that the plan could incentivize deforestation in Argentina, where expanding cattle ranches often means clearing grasslands and forests. Labor advocates are questioning whether imported meat would come from facilities that meet U.S. standards for worker safety and animal welfare. Even within Trump's own circle, there's division. Some advisors reportedly love the populist optics, taking on big beef and championing lower prices for families. Others see a trade policy nightmare that could backfire spectacularly if domestic producers retaliate by cutting supply or lobbying Congress for protectionist laws. Meanwhile, Argentina's government is playing the long game. President Milei's team sees this as a diplomatic breakthrough, a chance to secure not just meat exports, but also potential U.S. credit lines and investment flows. In Buenos Aires, headlines frame the proposal as Trump's endorsement of Milei's free market revolution. It's as much about symbolism as supply. For decades, Argentina has been a country rich in resources, but poor in stability. Now, aligning with the U.S. on trade gives Milei both credibility and cash flow, but the partnership also risks painting Argentina as dependent on Washington's political whims, a dynamic that could shift overnight if U.S. farmers push back hard enough. Within the U.S., the reaction has been predictably split. Consumer groups welcome any plan that could lower prices, even modestly, but the agriculture lobby, one of the most influential political forces in the country, is already mobilizing. Lawmakers from cattle states like Montana and South Dakota are drafting bills that would require stricter country of origin labeling and impose quotas on foreign beef. We can't let American ranchers compete against artificially cheap imports, one senator said. The tension reveals the core contradiction of Trump's populism, a promise to help working families that sometimes comes at the expense of working producers. There's also the question of timing. This announcement comes as Trump faces mounting political pressure over inflation, housing costs, and foreign policy tensions. By zeroing in on beef, he's targeting one of the most visible symbols of inflation fatigue, something every voter understands. It's the same strategy he used in 2009 when he targeted Chinese steel and soybeans. Find a commodity that hits emotional and economic nerves simultaneously. This time, it's food instead of factories. And as history shows, food politics can be the most explosive kind of politics. Critics call it a distraction, arguing that importing beef won't fix the structural issues driving inflation. Supporters call it a power move, a reminder that Trump, unlike his predecessors, is willing to use unconventional tools to fight economic pressure. But beneath the headlines lies a larger story, a nation wrestling with its own identity. Can America still be the land of self-reliance if it imports dinner from abroad? Is global trade the solution to local pain, or just another layer of dependency dressed up as relief? These are the questions that make this story more than just about beef. They make it a reflection of America's crossroads between populism and pragmatism, between short-term relief and long-term stability, as the administration continues to signal that a deal is on the table. Markets are already reacting. Cattle futures dropped slightly after Trump's remarks, a sign that investors take his words seriously even without official policy in place. Argentinian export groups, meanwhile, are preparing contingency plans to ramp up production if Washington calls. Behind the scenes, diplomats are quietly discussing logistics, tariffs, and food safety protocols. What began as a one-liner at a press gaggle has now evolved into a potential trade alliance with real consequences. In the end, whether the U.S. actually buys Argentinian beef or not may matter less than the message it sends. It's a signal to voters that Trump sees inflation as a personal battle. It's a signal to foreign partners that American policy can pivot fast and unpredictably. And it's a signal to domestic industries that nothing, not even the most sacred Buy American slogan, is immune from negotiation when politics and prices collide. Trump's genius, or chaos, depending on where you stand, lies in that unpredictability. One week he's railing against imports, the next he's threatening to flood the market with them. It's governing by instinct, not ideology. As Americans continue to feel the squeeze at the grocery store, one thing is certain: the politics of beef are about to get very loud. Whether this plan cools prices or sparks a trade firestorm, it perfectly encapsulates the Trump era. Bold, disruptive, and impossible to ignore. Because in Trump's America, even dinner is a battlefield.